Good morning. Let's talk ecological succession today. As we start, I want you to kind of get your brain going and identify two producers of both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Producers, remember, are those things that can make their own food, usually through the process of photosynthesis. Terrestrial means land, aquatic means water. So one example of a land producer would be the palm trees we see all around Lake Havasu. An example of aquatic producers would be kind of that seaweed that scratches us as we jump into our lake. Okay, so changes in the ecosystems, ecological succession. Remember, an ecosystem is going to be all the living and non-living things in an area, the biotic and the abiotic factors. Biotic factors in this picture would be plants and trees, and we don't see them, but we can assume that there's birds and maybe bears and jaguars in the forest. Our abiotic would be the temperature that's there, the sunlight, the air, if there's any sort of breeze or wind, the rocks and such like that. Succession is something that's going to happen after something. It succeeds it in that it's after. So when we speak about ecological succession, it's going to be something that happens after perhaps a natural disaster changes the ecosystem. For example, it might be a forest fire or a glacier that scrapes everything off the side of the mountain. It could even be a volcano that changes the landscaping. So here we have a good definition of ecological succession. And you'll notice that it starts off natural and gradual changes. So these things are going to come back naturally, come back gradually. It could take quite a bit of time for things to come back. Primary succession. Primary means first. So this is going to happen first after these disasters. And notice that they begin in a place without any soil. So the site of a volcano, that's all volcanic rock, that lava rock and such. Landslides that have scraped all the soil away. Flooding, which has carried it away with all the water and such. It starts with the arrival of living things such as lichens. A lichen is actually a symbiotic relationship. It's a mutualistic relationship between a fungus and an algae. Now, algae needs a lot of moisture in order to survive, and fungus needs food. It is heterotrophic in that it needs to eat something else. So the fungus is going to provide the algae with the moisture that it needs, and the algae is going to go through photosynthesis and help provide the food that the fungus needs. And they are a very, very low-lying organism, meaning they're very, very short to the ground. And key here, they do not need soil to survive. They can actually just kind of cling to the rocks and such that might be there. Now, they're called a pioneer species. Pioneer meaning first. Remember the pioneers who came out and settled the Old West. They were the first to be here, of course, after our Native Americans. So here is a couple pictures of lichen, what they might look like. And then here's just a kind of a cute little picture of the pioneer moving van, those things that are first moving in. According to the picture, what is an example of a pioneer species? In this case, I look at the picture and I see lots and lots of, see what we have going on there? I see lots of insects. So that would be our answer there. The pine trees are going to come later because they are larger. And as far as our carnivores, we first need some herbivores and that to come in. Primary successions, the soil starts to form as lichens, and the forces of weather and erosion help break down rocks into smaller pieces. Now, when these lichens die, they decompose and add small amounts of organic matter. Remember, organic is living matter to the rock, and that's going to help make soil. Soil is necessary for plants to take root and such, a little bit looser than the rock. So you see some of that happening right here. Simple plants like mosses and ferns can grow in that new soil. They're very short plants still. And so which of the following is an example of a pioneer species for primary succession? Pioneer being some of the first that are going to come along with primary succession, the succession being first. In this case, I hope that you have chosen our lichen. Rocky Island appears as oceanic waters recede. Which of the following forms of vegetation would probably appear first on the bare rocks? Well, trees is going to be out because they're going to be too big. Weeds, generally very tall. Shrubs, a little shorter, but again, that's going to be the lichens. Hey, primary succession, well, you've had your simple plants come in, but now they die, and that's going to add more organic material to the soil. It's going to thicken, and then the grass and the wildflowers and other plants can begin to take over. So we're going to get a little bit larger of the plants now. And then those are going to die, add more nutrients to the soil, and the shrubs and the trees can survive now. Then, once we have all those producers, now we can get other animals to come in, the insects, the small birds. Those are starting to move in because they have the food sources from the plants and such. And even our mammals that are carnivores can come in because their sources of food, being like maybe the small birds and the insects, are going to have the producers to eat. A climax community. Stable group of plants and animals that is the end result. So it's the final. Remember the climax in a story, that very end that kind of grabs you there. Does not always mean big trees. Okay, we've got prairies that are flat with grasses. We are at cactus and deserts. But it is like the larger things that are going to live in that specific part. Secondary succession. This is going to be next. Okay, the place already has soil. That's key there. Remember, primary didn't have soil. Secondary will have soil, and it was once the home of living organisms, but something's come in and destroyed that, and now it has to come back to it. Examples of things that could have happened were fires and tornadoes and such, and maybe not everything was destroyed, but a lot of it was. So what grows after the disturbance takes place? Well, once again, these are going to be very small things to start off. But since we're in secondary, we can actually have our grasses begin it. You can see here the disturbance happens like maybe the fire. Then our grasses are going to start growing. Then our shrubs and our small trees and our climax forest. Okay. You can see here about how many years it takes for some of these things to actually happen. Annual plants, 1 to 2 years coming in. Mature oak and hickory forest, like 150 years. That's huge. That's very, very long, especially after a forest fire, and that's what makes them, for one reason, so bad. But there's lots of reasons forest fires are bad. Okay, the fire destroys several hundred acres of forest. Which of these would you first expect to observe growing in the months immediately following? I'm not going to give you the answer here because I'm hoping that you do this on your own and you're starting to understand the. Here's a true or false question. Again, you are going to need to go ahead and come up with your correct answer. Please put this on your paper. I will be checking them tomorrow. And again, another question for you. Put it on your paper. I will be checking it. Okay, so for the following slides, determine which are examples of primary succession and which are examples of secondary. So we've got a forest fire here. One of your clues is going to be that I do see grasses and such. Okay, the glacier scraped all soil from a rocky area. That's your clue. Moss begins to grow. Okay, here looks like a volcanic eruption. Okay, here we've got it filling in as algae and other plants die, fall to the bottom. And this being our last slide, I want to remind you that the homework portion of this is not due tomorrow. The homework portion is something we're going to work on in class tomorrow. So if you have completed the notes to this point, congratulations, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.